You going through a midlife crisis? Well, this one's for you. Welcome back to the Mind Strong Edge. Today's letter comes from a gentleman. It doesn't actually say how old he is, but we're going to guess around the mid to late 40s based on the information in his letter. He starts, Dear Mind Strong Edge, I hope you're doing well. I'm reaching out because I've been going through a rough patch and I feel like I need some advice from a professional who might understand what I'm experiencing. Well, that's pretty much the reason everyone starts reaching out to a counsellor or someone to help them out. Over the past few years, it doesn't say how many years, so that'd be really interesting to know whether it's 2, 5 or 10 to get an understanding of how long this has been brewing for. Over the past few years, I've noticed I've become more isolated both socially and emotionally. My work demands keep increasing, long hours, constant deadlines, and the pressure to stay competitive. It's hard to find the time for anything else. Okay, and I've let a lot of things slide. Well, there's nothing in there that's going to raise any alarm bells. This is pretty typical stuff so far. You've been in a job for a few years, and it's the demands of it are probably starting to wear you down. I used to be close to my mates, but now it feels like I don't even have the energy to maintain those relationships. When you say energy, I would be asking whether this is emotional energy or physical energy. I'm going to guess it's emotional energy. Do I have the energy to even want to sit with my mates and listen and talk about old times? Or is potentially there going to be conversations that come up that I just don't want to participate in because they are going to draw attention to this gap that we're starting to explore in this letter. Most of them have their own families and busy careers, and I can't remember the last time we hung out or even had a proper conversation. When you start comparing yourself to your mates, you are comparing yourself in a way to yourself. So this is something we need to get out of the way right now. And that is that when we look back, we're not just looking back at who we were, we're actually seeing who we are still right now. We're not a different person. We're a product of all those experiences and things that we did. We're a product of those people that we had in our lives, whether we like it or not. So it's very important to realize that our mates, the people that we associated with, all created memories that make us the person that we are right now. Because when things happen in the now, when we start thinking about things or we're in a situation, the thoughts that dictate our behavior here and now come from us pattern matching to something that we know in the past, a reliable piece of information that we surface, our unconscious surfaces, and contributes to that behavior that we present right now. Our subconscious really has no concept of time. So whether it's going back 5 minutes or 5 years or 10 years or even longer, it's just seeking that piece of reliable information that it can use in a split second to influence our behavior. So we are a product right here, right now, of who we used to be or who we still are, more specifically. At home, things have been challenging too. I love my family. Of course you do. But lately I feel disconnected from them. My partner and I used to have a much closer relationship. I'd love to explore that. Let's talk about the family. How close was the relationship? Why do you say it was close? And what's actually changed with that now? But now it's like we're two ships passing in the night. Very cliche, but it really describes a point in our lives where we have abandoned the relationship that we had with that particular person. It's just no longer there, or it appears to no longer be there. It was there, it is a part of us, but we're kind of ignoring it because of something else that's getting in the way or clouding our vision. Between work and taking care of the kids, we don't have much time left for each other, even when we do have time. Okay, so I'd have to challenge you on that. Do you have the time or not? Seriously, you say here that you don't have much time left for each other, but then you go on to say, even when we do, I'm usually too drained to engage. I also feel like I'm failing as a father sometimes. You're talking in a lot of very general terms in this letter. And that's not a criticism, because more often than not, people, when they first go and seek help from a counselor, will be very general. You don't have the specifics. And that's why you go to talk to someone. This person will help you find those specifics and start to zoom in on things. This is very much like If you're driving in your car and it doesn't sound right, there's something just wrong. Now you can continue to drive along going, I'm not quite sure what that is. Hopefully I'm going to get to my destination. Or you can stop and lift the hood and take a look. Now you don't even have to be a mechanic to do that. But what it enables you to do is to just look across that engine bay and go, what is there something here that's amiss? Is there something here that's wrong? Let's start to take a look. Oh, that cord's out. But it's that lifting of the hood that's going to allow us to then take a look. At the moment, we haven't lifted the hood on this situation. He says, "So I'm feeling like I'm failing. I feel like I'm failing like a father sometimes." Again, drawing a comparison to, well, if you're failing as a father, then you must have been a good father at some point. How old are the kids? And what's changed? What is it that's actually changed? I want to be more present with my kids, but the constant stress is weighing me down. And I'm finding it hard to be the dad I want to be. Want to be or were? And again, when we talk in terms of what you were, it is still a part of who you are now. It's just that we're starting to create some distance in there mentally. I can see that it's affecting them too, and that where it really worries me. How is it affecting them? What are they doing? What's their behavior like? How has it changed that has alluding you to the fact that it is affecting them? What we need to do is understand what's real and what is something that you have conjured up as a sense of reality. Has your sense of reality or your worldview changed in any way? And has it just you that's changed? Have you changed around the reality, or has reality actually changed? We need to get down to those specifics, but we're not there yet. We're not there yet. At work, I don't feel connected to anyone either. Okay, so is this just relationships in general? Is this your relationship with the world that has changed, or your perspective of the world that's changed? Has any of these other things actually changed, or is it just you that has shifted in orbit around your world? There is constant pressure to keep up with younger colleagues. The threat of the younger colleague biting at your heels. And I sometimes feel like I'm just going through the motions to stay afloat. The camaraderie that I used to enjoy with co-workers has faded. And now I often find myself eating lunch alone or leaving work without as much as a quick goodbye to anyone. Okay, well, has it faded because of your change in behavior? Or is it just, faded in general? Again, we need to get some perspective on where this change has occurred. Is it just occurring for you up here? Is your perspective of your, or at least your reality, becoming a little bit distorted because of something? Now, this could be simply because of age. And this is why we introduce this as a classic midlife crisis, because age will do this to us. As we get older, we have more to compare ourselves to. Particularly, as he says here, the younger colleagues in the workplace can be a prime breeding ground for this sense of distance that might be brewing. But you don't even say goodbye, or even anything more than a quick goodbye. I know that a lot of this is on me. All right, we have an admission. I've withdrawn because I feel overwhelmed, but I'm also starting to realize that this isolation is just making things worse. Absolutely, it is doing that, but it's making them worse in your mind. Ultimately, that will influence others because your behavior will ultimately start to influence other people. But initially, it's something that's happening up here for you, and we need to get to the bottom of this. Recently, I stumbled upon an article that talked about that it's important for men to have hobbies and creative outlets to manage stress and improve mental health. Yes, absolutely it is. Have some interests. That goes for anyone. It doesn't matter about age or gender or anything. Get involved in something. You stumbled across the article. Were you searching Dr. Google at the time? Perhaps. It goes on to say, it struck a chord because I honestly can't remember the last time I did something just for fun. I used to love playing the guitar. Why'd you stop? And I'd spent hours tinkering with old cars. Why did you stop those things? But those interests have faded into the background as life got busier. And now, when I have spare time, I often just collapse in front of the TV or scroll through my phone. So you're saying here that life's gotten busier, which sounds like the excuse for pushing these things away. But then you also say that you do have spare time, and with that spare time, rather than re-engage in those things like playing the guitar or tinkering with cars, you just collapse in front of the TV. or scrolling through your phone. You're doing things that are not really requiring a lot of emotional energy to get through. They're very, very easy things to consume time. And if we go back to the question of your mates, having energy, I don't even have the energy to maintain those friendships. What we would need to look at here is what you consider to be the energy. What is it that's going to give you the energy to reconnect? And it's got to come down to emotional energy, and it's got to come down to focus. And at the moment, it seems like we're focusing a little bit too much on the daunting prospect of getting older, of things moving along, of this gap, this widening gap that's happening between our perception of ourselves and where we think we should be. And the only thing that's going to fill that gap is unhappiness. As it gets wider, more unhappiness is going to fall into that gap. He goes on to say here, I guess I'm writing because I feel stuck. I know something has to change. Well, something has to change, and it's probably you. I'd say it's almost definitely you. You're not going to change anyone around you. The person you have to change to begin with is yourself. But I'm not sure where to start. I don't really know what hobbies. It's again with the hobbies. I don't even know what hobbies would interest me anymore. Well, you've already got hobbies. You've got your mates. You've got your family. You've got your guitar. You've got your cars. How many things are you going to ignore while you're seeking something else? Or how to make time for them when I already am stretched so thin. The idea of picking up an old hobby like playing the guitar again sounds appealing. Good. But I'm worried it'll just feel like another thing I have to do rather than something that brings me joy. Did it bring you joy? Are you a musical person? Do you love the music in your life? Then why does it feel like a chore? Why does it feel like reconnecting with those things that define us is a chore? And I'm going to suggest here that you're rallying against some aspect of yourself that you don't like anymore, or you don't want to be a part of, or you're seeing some distance. And this can come from age. As we age, we look back at an earlier version of ourselves and those things that remind us of who we are, like the younger colleagues, for example. And we start to have a problem with that. We start to feel old. We start to think that we're a different person. We see a gap between where we are now as an older person and where we might have been as a younger, more interesting person that picked up the guitar once in a while and did something with it. But this is a gap that we are creating because we forget the fact that those things that we were are still who we are right now. They haven't left us. It's just our perception that has changed, right? Our focus has changed, but the reality of who we are has not changed at all. We are a product of all those things, whether they happened a year ago or 5 years ago or 20 years ago. They're still the things that make us who we are now. It's a trap to fall into that, creating this gap that doesn't even exist in reality, but we create a gap between ourselves, our perception of ourselves, and who we think we should be. And once again, unhappiness is just going to fall straight into that gap. So it's not the things that you have to do, rather than something that brings you joy. I really struggle with that, because the idea of picking up an old hobby, you're abandoning that because you feel it's something you have to do, and now you're thinking about going and finding something else. So what's going to make that something else not just something that you have to do again? It's just going to be another thing. And next thing, you've got a stockpile of all of these hobbies that you've had, and they all just become something that you have to do because they're not bringing you the joy that you once experienced in life, because you've created that distance. I've also noticed that I've become more anxious and irritable. Absolutely, of course you are. You're going to the sense of anxiety around the fact that you are creating a persona for yourself that actually doesn't exist. You're creating a new place where you see yourself and trying to distance yourself from yourself, if that makes sense. People try to escape themselves by buying a motorcycle as they go through a midlife crisis, or moving to a completely different country or town. But the things that these people don't realize is that no matter where you go or what you do, you are still right there, and you are still a product of all those things that you have encountered, or your relationships, your activities, your hobbies throughout your life. You're still a product of that stuff. It doesn't go away. You can't escape it. And the anxiety and the irritability comes from that knowing that, but not accepting it. And I feel like I'm constantly on edge. Okay, you're on the edge. Well, on the edge, we change, my friend. So there is hope. The article I read mentioned how hobbies can help with stress reduction and improving mood by boosting dopamine levels. Don't get hung up on dopamine. If you want a dopamine hit, go and hug your partner for 20 or 30 seconds or longer, because you will get a hit just from that. Rather than just the quick hug and kiss goodbye in the morning, how about hanging on to it for a little bit longer? A good 20 to 30 seconds, you'll get your dopamine hit. But don't pursue things that are going to give you dopamine hits. It is not a good thing to pursue, because you'll end up finding something that gives you that hit, but is ultimately not satisfying, because the hit will ultimately just leave you wanting more. I think it's something I could really benefit from, as I've been feeling pretty flat and unmotivated for a while now. Also talked about mindfulness and focusing on creative activity that can help clear my mind of all the stressful thoughts. Yeah, temporarily. It's like sleep. Some people will just look forward to their restful night's sleep and dread getting up in the morning. They wake up before the alarm going, oh my God, I've got to face the day. You can only clear your mind for so long before the reality of reality kicks back in and you have to deal with it. So it is very much a temporary reprieve, clearing your mind of those stressful thoughts. You say, this sounds exactly like what I need. No, it's exactly what you don't need. Something to take me out of my head for a while. Nothing's going to take you out of your head. This is why people, find themselves with alcohol and drug addictions, because the only way they can stay out of their head is to keep consuming the alcohol or the drug. But the bottom line is that you cannot escape your own head. You cannot escape yourself. And the more you try to escape, or the more dissatisfaction you have with the version of yourself, how you see yourself, the wider that gap, the more unhappiness is going to plummet into that gap. Another thing that resonated with me with the idea of building social connections through hobbies. Yeah, absolutely. But what about building social connections with the social connections that you already have, or rebuilding them or strengthening them? As I mentioned, I've become pretty isolated and it feels like I've lost touch with people. Yes, absolutely. Thanks for admitting it. I'm open to the idea of joining a group or class, but I'm not sure where to start. It would be great to meet new people and maybe even reconnect with some of the mates I've lost touch with. Well, how about starting with reconnecting rather than creating new relationships? Because it really sounds here like the problem that you have, and I hesitate to use the word problem, but the situation you've found yourself in is that you have disconnected from people around you, and not specific people, just people around you. You have lost touch with people because you are cocooning yourself in this version of yourself that you have created that is different from the person who you actually are. And that sense of isolation will propagate with any new relationships that you establish. So if you go and join a new group, the chances are that too will end up on the scrap heap, and you will just go from group to group to group if you want to keep pursuing different things, but never satisfying that desire to be connected with people. As human beings, we love to be connected with people, but you are creating a gap between those connections and yourself. So if you want a place to start, if you want a hobby to start, then find something that is in that gap that will reconnect you with those people. Cook, learn to cook. It's a wonderful way to reconnect with your family. It doesn't say anything here about your ability to be a cook, but why not give it a go? Why not sit with one of your kids and teach them how to play guitar? Pass on some of that love for music that you've obviously had, and that skill that you have in playing the instrument. This is not something that you have to do. It needs to be something that you want to do. Take those things, those skills and those relationships that you already have while there's still some hope, and find a hobby in the middle that reconnects you with that thing, rather than finding a hobby over here that connects you with another group or a people that you ultimately may retreat from as well. I really appreciate some advice on how to begin incorporating hobbies or creative outlets into my life without feeling overwhelmed. Dude, if you bring something new in, how is it not going to overwhelm what you already have? It's just going to pile on. It is really just going to pile on if you go and join a men's shed. Well, there's nothing wrong with joining those sort of organizations, but you need to look at those relationships that you already have and work on reconnecting with those, because otherwise you're just going to go from abandoned relationship to abandoned relationship. I know I need to find some balance, but I struggle with the guilt of taking time for myself. Really? There's always been something that needs to be done, whether it's work or at home. Okay, so again, you're separating yourself from your own life. You're cocooning yourself in this version of yourself, which is to use the psychological term, a cognitive distortion. And this is where we would challenge you on that. We would talk about your view of yourself, and is it actually real? What do you have evidence to support the fact that you are now this person and you're no longer a product of all these things that actually do make you you, and now for some reason you're someone else? You've become this other person that's intrinsically isolated, and you need to reestablish some balance, but you need to go and do it elsewhere. You struggle to take time for yourself. Obviously, we've talked about that. Are there any specific hobbies you've seen work well for men who feel they're in a similar position? Yes, absolutely. We just talked about those. And how can I make sure I'm not neglecting my responsibilities while still carving out time for something that might improve my mental health? Hobbies, absolutely a great idea. You're on the winning ticket there, but you just need to find the hobbies that are in that middle ground that are going to reconnect you with those people. So I don't know what you did with your mates, but there's got to be something in there that you did with them. Don't overcomplicate it. If you want to reconnect, thanks for taking the time to read this. I know I've rambled on a bit, as have I, but I really appreciate the guidance you can offer. I'm ready to make a change and improve my well-being, but I could use a bit of direction on where to start. Hey, thanks for that letter. This is a very typical midlife crisis starting point for a lot of people, and there's nothing unusual in this. It's very typical. And it's something that we would employ a number of techniques, particularly for men. One would be something called cognitive behavioral therapy, and that is to restructure your view of yourself, because something has become distorted. There is some lens that's come down in front of you that's giving you a different view of reality, and it could be due to the stress of work. I'd love to know what you actually did for a job. And why specifically is it the younger colleagues that seem to be a source of the stress? But it's very, very typical of a guy who's getting older and starts to become aware of his age. I'm starting to feel like I'm on that slippery slide of the slope. I'm going down. I no longer have skills that are viable in the workplace. Well, is that true? Is there no value in your wealth of experience and your wisdom that you've accumulated throughout your life? Are you simply looking at the wrong side of it? What's stopping me from picking up the phone and calling one of my mates and saying, hey, let's have a drink. Let's get together. Let's have a chat. Let's go and kick a ball around like we used to, without overcomplicating it. But this is definitely a letter that cries out that you are in the process of separating yourself from the real you that has all those relationships. It's not you separate from those relationships, it's you separating from the real you. So you're creating a distortion that in your own mind is manifesting a different view of yourself. You're looking at negative things, it sounds like, and you're conjuring up a version of yourself in your own mind that is different from the person who you want to be or were. And it's in that difference between how we see ourselves, and only we see this, Okay, when we're really honest, only we see this version of ourselves. But the difference between how we see ourselves and where we want to be or where we think we should be, that gap is where unhappiness falls. And the bigger the gap, the more the unhappiness and obviously the anxiety and the stress and the challenges that come with that, that are going to impact your mental health. That's where it all starts. So, my friend, thank you for writing in. I really strongly suggest that you follow your instincts on the hobbies thing. Get involved. You obviously feel that whatever you've read has spoken to you. It has struck a chord, and you can see. And I would suggest that perhaps the reason you can see that this is a benefit is because you've done these things in the past. You've had hobbies in the past. You play the guitar, you tinker with cars. These are great things. So you understand the benefit of that. But it's not necessary for you to go out and find something completely new, because I'm going to suggest to you that if you do, there's a very good chance that they will end up on the scrap heap as well. And we're just going to build a bigger minefield of failed endeavors as we see them, rather than successes. So we need to take those things that we already have and refocus on those, rekindle them. I hesitate to use the word rebuild because they're already built. They're already there. Our mates, our partner, our family, they're already there. The guitar's probably sitting in the corner when you walk into the lounge room. Where is it? Put it out somewhere so you actually see it. Have a talk, just get it up and play it. Just, tune it up and play it, and let those notes resonate through the house, and let the kids get involved. Teach them. Cook. The job jar. A little bit of renovation, or a lick of paint, or something that's going to re-engage you, but in the context of those relationships that you already have. Don't walk away in a different direction, because, my friend, those are probably the most important things in our life, because they define who we are now. And I know we talked about this, that we see this as a version of ourselves that existed in the past, and we use past tense to talk about that, but it is who we are now. We are simply the survival of our memories from one moment to the next. That makes us philosophically who we are as a person. As an actual person, is just the survival of those memories and those experiences we have with those people, and are fundamentally important to us. And if we want to stay in touch with who we are as a person, then we need to make an effort to stay in touch with those people that orbit around us. Yes, finding the emotional energy can be tough, but let's take it in bite-sized chunks. All right? I'm going to suggest to you that the thing to do here is to write a list down, a priority list, a list of things, or rather people that are important in your life, and put them in a priority. And I can imagine that probably your family, or members of, even bring it down to members of your family, put them in a list, who's most important at that list, and start from the top and just work on that one person. Make it real simple. You may not want to cook, but I'm going to put it out there and say, why not give that a go? Talk to your partner and say, hey, look, I'd love to try a little bit of cooking. I'd love to make dinner on the weekend. Can you help me in the kitchen? Can if you haven't cooked before, get some help. Don't try and do it yourself without any experience, without any help. You might set yourself up for failure, so it could backfire. So get a little bit of help. Maybe get the kids involved. Get some pizza bases and cook something up. But keep it simple and approach it in bite-sized chunks from the top of that priority list as you get down. When you get down to your mates, well, they might be right at the top. It's up to you. But reach out, but do it in a very, very simplistic way. So, hey, it's been ages. Let's meet up. When can we make a date? And let's just go go for a surf, or whatever it is that you used to do with your mates, to rekindle those. But please don't think that you have to abandon all of this wonderful stuff and go and find a new hobby that's going to give you this dopamine hit and make life all happy, because it'll be a very temporary thing. Because you'll just discover that you are still this person that's dissatisfied with who you are. So you need to reduce that gap. As you reduce the gap, unhappiness will exit stage left, and happiness will start to fill the space, because there's no hole there for unhappiness to fall into. Hey, thanks for your letter. If you'd like to send us something in, there is an email address in the description for this channel on YouTube. We will get to it. It might take a few weeks, but we'd love to hear from you. If you did like this video, if you feel like you're in a similar place and you got something out of it, please hit the like button. It really means a lot. And subscribe as well. And that way you'll get alerted when we have our next video. Thanks for joining the Mind Strong Edge. We'll see you next time.